Good afternoon, everybody. And I think we talked about the unpredictable rains that happened, but I must talk about the fact that Bangalore is a city where the traffic can probably slow you down, but the creativity will not. You know, I saw that yesterday traveling back from the dinner late night, the city was abuzz with so much of energy. And I think that's truly what Bangalore stands for. We today are actually diving into public spaces and cultural platforms. So we're talking about, is that audible now? Yeah, public spaces and cultural platforms. And these are not just mere location in our geographical maps. These are actually the breathing ecosystems that are pulsating with creativity and excitement. And we see that in BIC as one example. These spaces may not speak in words, but they certainly tell the stories. They are the cultural hubs. So I think it's an opportune moment to explore how art, culture, and public spaces are redefining the world around us. The cultural platforms and public spaces contribute immensely to the cultural tourism, and we've heard the earlier panel talk about it, and improving and contributing to the local economies. And I think that's one area we will try and dwell with the panelists that we have. Yes, of course, my pleasure to be here moderating this session on creative economy and specifically on the role of cultural platforms and public spaces. For that, we have a distinguished panel with diverse background and abundant experience. So let me start with introducing them one by one. Join me in welcoming Ms. Priyanka Mary Francis, Director, NGMA, Bengaluru. Give her a good round of applause. Priyanka holds a BTech in Applied Electronics and Instrumentation from a College of Engineering, Trivandrum. She began her career as a scientist at ISRO, where she worked for 2 years before joining Indian Administrative Service. Over the years, Priyanka has held significant administrative positions, and in 2024, she took over her current role as Director of NGMA, continuing her impactful work in public administration. And I'm told that NGMA Bengaluru is going through a paradigm shift after she has taken over. So thanks, Priyanka, to contribute in that direction. Let me introduce Arundhati Nag. She's the founder and managing trustee, Sanket Trust, a personality that hardly needs an introduction, but I think it's customary to do that. Arundhati, please be on stage. She's a prominent actor and theater personality who's been involved with multilingual theater in India for over 50 years. She's the founder and managing trustee of Sanket Trust that runs Rang Shankara. Arundhati has been involved in several television and film projects and received both Karnataka State Film Award and National Film Award. She has been presented with the Padma Shri by the President of India for her untiring efforts and tremendous achievement in arts. And she was also conferred with Sangeet Natak Academy Award and in theatre acting by India's National Academy of Music, Dance and Theatre. What an accomplished tenure that has been. And the last in the panel, Bijoy Ramachandran, architect and partner, Hundredhands. Bijoy founded Hundredhands, which is widely recognized architectural practice in 2003 with his partner, Sunita Kondrol. He currently serves the Faculty of Architecture at the British Council of Rome and is the design chair for the postgraduate program at BMS College of Architecture in Bangalore. Ramachandran has a master's degree in architecture and urbanism from Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a bachelor degree of BMS College of Architecture. There's so many degrees that you hold, I'm running short of time on that. In addition to the practicing architecture, he has also produced documentary films, two of the on the celebrated Indian architect, Sri B.V. Doshi, and one on the architectural practice in Bangalore, Architect and the City, a Bangalore Perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for our esteemed panelists here. So how we structured is that we are going to ask the panelists a couple of common questions, and then we'll throw some questions to the audience in the middle of the thing. We want a lot of interaction, and that's why I wanted the audience to come in front. So, this question is common to the panel that is here. How do you see these cultural platforms contributing to the creative economy in India today? And if you can shed some examples of some successful places that exist in India. Bijoy, we want to start with you on that.
Well, thanks, Sanjeev, and thanks, Sadhana and Sanjay and Asad for inviting me. Well, the first, when you sent us the questions, the first name that came to mind was Rangashankara. It is an incredible example, a great paradigm um, of what the impact of a cultural platform can have in society in furthering, both access and meaning for cultural practice. The PIC, of course, thanks to an incredible set of stewards who've taken this institution and turned it into something really meaningful, is important. But there were a couple of others that also I was thinking of. Venkatappa Art Gallery, which is an incredibly inexpensive place to rent for young artists to access, to show their art. Friends of mine have had exhibitions there. It's a great example of what public patronage can achieve, through these institutions. The Chitra Sante, which Chitrakala Parishad holds every year. We've found, so many artists through that, and of course a lot of artists. It's really inexpensive. I think it's 100 rupees or something to get a stall. It's really, really inexpensive. But then for a day, you're suddenly, on par with other artists, putting your work out there. And then the other example I thought of was the TED Talks, which is kind of an online platform that all of us access, and that gives meaning and access for us to share with these artists and cultural practitioners. So just some examples.
Yeah. So Arundhati, specifically from Rangshankara's perspective, how do you see, you're now celebrating the 20 years, I believe, of Rangshankara. So how do you see that contributing to the local Bangalore economy in terms of, or cultural economy or the creative economy? How has been the experience, and how do you see that contributing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I think the spillover is really enormous because when we began Rangashankara 20 years ago, it's not as though Rangashankara created theatre or gave birth to theatre in the city, but it was a fragmented presence in various smaller spaces, informal spaces, ill-equipped spaces, and spaces with no vision. Yeah, so they did not know who they are. We have the distinction of having many multi-purpose spaces in our country. But the truth is that you don't get legal advice when you go to a doctor. So you need to know who you are. You need to know what you don't want. And then what you want is defined. It's almost a bit like Michelangelo saying you need to know what you don't want, and the rest of it is the statue. So when Rangashankara came on the scene 20 years ago, there were a lot of dialogues among the community that, why does she want to build another space? There are so many defunct spaces. Take any one of them. The government has many, like Yavanika. She can take one of them and make a theatre there. But we knew that the government really has another task to fulfill. And consistency is not its hallmark, at least at that time. So when the government gives a space to a particular theatre group or a bunch of people to run, within 2 years of them making a success of it, you have another person saying, why only them? Why not me? Democracy for all of us, this is. So you don't have continuity. And the truth even about government grants is you apply for a grant this year, you get it. You're not sure you're going to get it the next year. So some people like us have learned how not to depend on the government for grants, though it's not the best situation to be. So when we opened 20 years ago, there were about 50 theatre groups in Bangalore. And I'm very happy to say that in 20 years, we have more than 150 theatre groups. That many youngsters have gravitated, have come together, have formed groups, have learned how to make decisions beyond themselves. And of course, there are the designers, there are people who are engaging in costume design, set design. There's the istriwala who has more regular job. There are makeup people who have more regular jobs. There are people who are designing posters.
Great.
So that's the spillover, that's the spin-off.
Yeah, so excellent. I think Sanjay also talked about the fact that, listen, how does places like this or platforms of cultural importance contribute to the economy? So it's not the ticket of $100 or $200 that we kind of pay. So if we are able to kind of make them stay for another night, I mean, the family spends, they use the transport, they shop, they eat, and they stay over. I think that's where probably the contribution becomes exponential. Talking of numbers, Bijoy, from your perspective, a city like Bangalore, and you gave me some examples. What is the right number of such places that should be there in Bangalore? Since we're talking about a huge, acceptance of cultural spaces in the audience today.
Well, I'll give you some context. I mean, Ravi has this wonderful joke that he always makes. Ravi Chandra was the previous director of the BIC. So he said the BIC went to the government for 2 acres next to the lake, and they got half an acre next to the Nala. So this is a very, very small site. It's around 18,000 square feet. It's a very small building. It's around 45,000 square feet. Of course, it's become a fairly important institution in the city. It just shows that there's a real hunger for this kind of space in the city. And just like Sanjoy and the panel before us spoke, we need something like this in every neighborhood in the city, for access, for people to have access to exhibition space, to auditoria, for NGO offices to operate out of. We don't have that at all. And so people, they come from a fair distance, braving Bangalore's terrible traffic and those spontaneous rains that Vikram spoke about. In spite of all of that, we have an incredible turnout for events at the BIC. And so there's a real hunger for it, and I think every neighborhood requires a small BIC. Yeah.
So while you're designing, what do you think is the key characteristics that make a public space a very effective cultural platform for creative experimentation or for the creative industry or the economy? I mean, what really is the key characteristics?
Well, before we worked on the BIC, we had a certain conception of how architecture was made. And then after the 7-year saga working on the BIC, of course, Naresh is here, who was a fantastic partner with us on this. We learned the hard way that at the heart of our work is this word that Sanjoy used, this idea of empathy. That you are working in a team with others and trying to figure out what this thing is. And so inventing the program, I mean, just 3 years of just discussing how big should the auditorium be. I mean, Arundhati was here one day and came into the auditorium and just shook her head and said, this is not going to work, and we've already built it, right? And it's already here. And so we had to cancel 1 row of seats. Of course, it works much better because of that. But this idea that the work is the result of a collaboration between many people is at the heart of a project like that. That you have to listen as an architect, that you're in the room to discuss and come to an agreement. And we had a great partner with Ravi. He was a fantastic client. He braved the 1,000-strong BIC membership for us. I told Ravi early on that I'm not going to be in town hall meetings presenting the project, and he said, okay, fine, I'll do that. You tell me, and I'll give you feedback, and he was our partner in that effort. So in terms of architecture, I'll just quickly answer. In terms of architectural moves, I would say this idea of a participatory space, that the real heart of a building like this exists outside of the programmed rooms. Auditoria, seminar rooms, all of that is fine. Exactly like Rangashankara, the heart of that building is the cafe, that lobby. You meet friends, you hang out, you talk about what you've just seen. This is really the heart of the BIC as well. The other thing is that the building should be kind of a background to life in a way, that it isn't really the architecture, but it's making space for life to happen. And the idea that it's flexible, that you can invent ways. I remember one of the days we had our famous rain showers, all of the electricity went off, they couldn't use the auditorium. They had the music performance in the space outside this. And Raghu or someone said that it sounded better than the auditorium, that this space was, maybe we should have all our events here. So this idea of flexibility to make enough space for people to invent ways in which to use it.
Yeah. So you're saying that a cultural venue has to be holistic in nature. I mean, it should provide more than just the performance spaces, but how is it kind of brought around, how the campus comes out? So there are existing buildings. I'm sure you acquired NGMA as an existing building and a campus. What do you see are the areas that you would like to have to make NGMA as a holistic cultural hub? That people should be able to kind of spend their weekends there.
Sure. NGMA has inherited a beautiful campus and a building, the heritage building, which is Manikya mansion with much history to itself. And Venkatraman Associates, who worked on the building, has done a wonderful job in reviving it into a happening place and building it as the concept behind the new architecture itself is a very much thought has gone into that. And the highlight of the space being the parking, which is available right in the middle of the city, which no other space there can actually aspire for. So, but given all that, there's a lot much footfall that we have to aspire for, because right now I think I have joined there only in June, and within my short stint there, what I have realized is that the place is so intimidating that the word modern art itself inhibits many from coming into and stepping in and appreciating the space. So our efforts as a team now have been to demystify the space and take up as many outreach programs as possible so that all categories, all age groups can come in and start enjoying different aspects. May not be with an art exhibition as of or right away, maybe with some other aspects. We have a beautiful sculpture garden externally as well as internally, and a lot of other activities we are trying to open up in collaboration with private enterprises also, so that we can have more people, especially children, to come into that space and enjoy the campus.
Fantastic. Arundhati, my question to you on, we talked about sustainability and how a cultural space needs to be sustainable. Only then it can contribute back to the economy. In the last 20 years, I'm sure you've had challenges. Can you share a few examples where you almost said, listen, I don't know whether it's going to take up the shape or not, the way you're desiring it to be. And how's been the journey throughout in terms of building up the venue to the present state?
Gosh, that's a huge question. Yes, it's the journey has not been without concern for money. Money has been a concern all the while, and that could be a problem of the time. Because 20 years ago, if you remember, the world was not as well to do as it is today. People were getting pink slips. And the corporate sector had not yet really firmed up the way it has right now. Communications were not what they are. We didn't have internet and mobile connectivity like we do have today. So a lot has changed. Even the way the development sector is looked at by the government or by the corporates, CSR has come into existence. A new language has come into existence, which we are still grappling with. Because we know how to make art, we don't know how to make proposals. And that's not my business, really. Suddenly, it has become the business of every artist to package themselves, to showcase themselves, and to sell themselves, and sustain themselves. So it's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. I think we need a new breed of professionals to come into our lives, into the lives of these spaces, which were born out of a different necessity. When Rangashankara was born 20 years ago, it was born out of a 40-year-old necessity. When I entered Bangalore 40 years ago, there was only one Ravindra Kalakshetra. And if you applied for a date, you got one date once in 3 months, which meant you could only do 4 shows in a year. Then came Chaudaya, then came other theatres, but you still did not have small spaces which could be used without having to have a sponsor. When you have a 1,000-seat auditorium, you necessarily need a benefactor or a sponsor to pay for a lot of the expenses. Because tickets are not always going to sustain, especially a movement. You can do a one-off, what was that? Yes, you can do a one-off. But that is not pan-Indian culture. That is a different experience.
Tell us a movement that kind of said, oh my God, I don't know whether it's going to happen or not happen. Anything that really kind of happened? Or was it challenges, but eventually you knew it'll take shape?
No. When the first JCB came and dug
Dug the
into the
place up.
earth, I knew there was no going back.
Lovely. That's very nice. I think a round of applause for the effort that you.
I'm for a positive JCB
So you talked about CSR coming in and, a lot of a paradigm shift in terms of how culture is seen today. How do you think the government and the private sector can collaborate and kind of contribute and support such initiatives if you were to ask you to make another Rang Shankara somewhere else in Bangalore? I mean, how would you want to see them contributing and, kind of accommodating your requests?
Yeah. So the original dream for Bangalore was 4 Ranga Shankaras. Yes. One dared to dream, one dared to say to S.M. Krishna, who was the chief minister then, that please take a look at this proposal. It's been languishing in the Karnataka government for the last 4 years. And if you think Bangalore deserves to have a theatre like this, do something about it. I think this was on the 1st of January, 4 years before Ranga Shankara happened, which was around 2000. Around the year 2000. And he read the first page which said Bangalore deserves to have 4, and this would be the first of 4 such theatres. So I did imagine 4, which meant a north, south, east, west grid.
So 1 down and 3 more to go.
I don't know whether I have it in me to do the rest of the 3. Somebody else should come forward. I'm happy to share the plan, the route.
But how do you now see, I'm sorry interrupting you, how do you see the government policy changing and, what would you want to see the government contributing?
One can see change now. Very recently, the central government announced a grant which institutions of national importance could apply for. And they didn't ask too many questions and too many guarantees. I don't know how much of that is going to fructify, but it's a very positive way of looking at institutions that impact culture nationally. And it's a fairly decent amount of money that they're ready to part with, a couple of crores for.
Up to 50 crores.
Yes, for running a place. And that would be like God's gift to a space like Ranga Shankara.
Fantastic. So Bijoy, my question to you, when you're given a brief to look at creating a platform of such nature, what is the brief? Is it more about making sure that the place is economically sustainable? Or is it just about creating a cultural hub? Or is it about cultural engagement? What is it? Is there a balance? And how do you kind of look at that design? And how do you look at approaching that particular brief?
Yeah, well, so just to talk about BIC and my experience here, when we first got the brief, yes, it was structured basically as a way to monetize, as many of the spaces as possible. But as we were going through the design, Ravi and the building committee, we mischievously started removing rooms from within the plan of the building. So we would show Ravi a plan and say, maybe this meeting room we can remove, or this conference room we can remove, so that we'll have more space in between, for people to meet, etc. Luckily, they saw value in that, and of course they're now monetizing all of that space that's in between as well for exhibitions, and they found ways to use that effectively. But yes, it's usually the brief starts with trying to figure out what your monthly rental may be, etc. But I think there is you have to. Doshi used to say that always, that there's always ambition that you have to tap. So you have to figure out where to press so that you can get something that makes it architecture than just a bunch of rooms.
But from a perspective of, as you said, this cultural hub has to be a holistic venue in itself. Yeah. So what are the 3-4 things that a venue must have for it to be self-sustaining, for it to kind of earn revenues on a regular basis? Because, honestly speaking, we can't run these places on grants forever. There will be 50 crores coming in, but for how long? So from a design perspective, from a functionality of a venue, how do you see that? I mean, what should be the characters or what should happen in a venue that would probably make it economically viable?
Well, I'm not really an expert in that. Architects are famously rather poor at these things. But nonetheless, what Vikram and Ravi, what I've heard from them, is that this model that Vikram spoke about, that they have a certain percentage of their events which are free BIC events,
Yep.
but they're cross-subsidized when they rent the facilities. Now, in the renting of the facilities, what they were really keen on as part of the program, again, Naresh was part of that program development as well, that we want to build into the program as much flexibility as possible so that you can figure out different ways to use this. This space, in fact, can be subdivided into 2 rooms. You can have workshops here, you can have an exhibition in this room.
That's from a space
It's set up-
perspective,
it's set up as a
So Priyanka, let me put that question to you. You look at NGMA, right? I don't know what the capacity of that place is, but are you kind of running full capacities as we speak now?
No.
No, yeah. So what do you think is missing in a place like NGMA that would probably start attracting people? What should a place have so that because end of the day, all these museums and these places are actually fighting up, people's time from shopping to going out for dinners and having a travel out for a weekend. So how do you kind of get people? How does they become a magnet so that people kind of spend time there? So what do you think should be added on?
So outreach is the major thing, and programming. For any museum and art gallery, programming plays the key role, and how do you outreach that to the public? So in this digital age, technology is always there to your rescue, and once you program your space as decided by different categories of the public, age group wise or their other socioeconomic profile wise, once you program it properly and once you target the outreach and publicity through the technology properly, then you can be rest assured that you have your audience there. And of course, when it comes to a museum or a public place, people come for different experiences. So in India, in museum traditionally, especially in public sector, in government space, we have been more concerned about conservation and preservation rather than exhibiting it in a right manner or in an interesting manner to the public. So now subtly we are taking help from some of the private organizations working in this space and activating the spaces, museum spaces, to how to program it in a proper manner. And for this, an education cell within the museum, like for example, science gallery, their programming is very nice. They have an in-house education team who focuses on different outreach programs as well. So that plays a key role in changing the landscape and the visitorship to a space, in my opinion.
Yeah. So NGMA Bangalore also has a beautiful open spaces. So are you? How are you leveraging those open spaces to kind of create a magnetism for the people to kind of come down? Are you doing something about that? Are you open to the ideas of radically approaching it differently? For example, internationally, if you see, there are restaurants in a cultural hub. There are multiple other activities that happen. It's rented out for events and other activities like that. Is there a plan to do something like that? So, making it economically viable, sustainable, is that something that you're looking at?
So unfortunately in India, museums are cost centers and not profit centers. So we are not, as part of a policy from the government, we are not supposed to rent out our space, and we have to associate free on a free basis with organizations who are having interest in contemporary art and visual art and exhibit it to the public for free. Again, our entry fees are as low as 20 rupees and free for the children, and we are supposed to keep it at that. So, but having said that, we are exploring partnerships with private organizations in using our open space. We have a beautiful mirror pool and we have a beautiful open space in the first floor of our new art gallery building, and we have an auditorium as well, which is presently under renovation, which has a seating capacity of around 180. And a lot of programs have been happening since many years there. And of late, we have been partnering with different organizations like FAHI, for example, where they are conducting self-care program through arts. And 3 sessions they have done in our space so far. We had performances from performance artists like Ms. Dimple Shah and more coming up, where they are using these open spaces for their demonstrations. So we are thinking from that angle of making use of these spaces through workshops, panel discussions, or many other programs which can attract people from different sectors and of different age groups. and thereby keeping that space alive. And our souvenir shop is also another highlight of for that matter, for any museum or art gallery, the merchandise is the one highlight where there is some income when it is operating in the public sector. That is the only source of additional income that you expect, and there's a lot to be done in that sector as well. And we are trying to focus and improve our collection in our art shop as well.
Yeah. So Arundhati, from your side, can Shankara become a hub of tourism? Can it contribute to the tourism of Karnataka? Or is it already doing? I mean, has that thought ever come to you that, listen, I am contributing to the tourism of the state?
I'm sure, yes.
Yes.
Without making it into one of our banners, there are people who come to Bangalore and very automatically say, where is this Rangashankara? We want to come and watch a play, because we meet them at the venue. And during festival time, like now we have a 5-week-long 20-year celebration, and last night we had music. It was free. It was a Saturday night. The cafe is converted into free music for the community kind of a space. So I know that we are doing it without it being on the agenda really. But besides that, I would know.
Yeah. So Bijoy, do you kind of take that as a part of planning a cultural space that, that's going to add to the boost the tourism of the state or the city? I mean, is there those kind of briefs also come to you when you're designing it in that manner? Or is it only about space and the architecture part of it?
You're giving a lot of credit to architects. No, we don't really. We get a commission once in a while. I mean, this is a very rare thing. This kind of a project, the BIC, is very unusual for us. Most of the time we get, institutions and there's a fixed program and they are isolated sort of, But the BIC, this engagement, and now we're working on another project with Ravi on Kamaraj Road, which is also structured in the same way, where it is supposed to be a place for, culture, for events and arts, etc. So these commissions are rare and we're really thankful for them. And through our clients, we're able to reach out to a much larger group of people thanks to their vision and patronage.
Yeah, because culture and I think tourism, and Juni also talked about it, you can't kind of separate these two. They have to coexist. So Priyanka, from NGMA perspective, what's the focus in terms of developing and contributing to the local tourism for Karnataka or for Bangalore city? I mean, how do you see that?
Yeah, so tourism is an integral part of any circuit which is involving a museum and art gallery. It is an integral part of a tourism circuit. So we have tie-ups with BMTC and we have tie-ups with tourism department also, wherein people are coming to NGMA as part of their regular Bangalore circuit, tour circuit. And with the tourism department, we are engaged in talks in opening up these spaces, public spaces, including NGMA and other historic places of historical importance of Karnataka government as well. Open these up to the public as part of guided tours or walk tours. So that discussion is going on. So through all this, we intend to boost the local tourism, because once people come here and see that space is there and the kind of merchandise or the kind of artwork that they see there, that has ripple effects, because then we are planning to tie up with our local craft clusters also, because in Karnataka we are famous for Channapatna toy cluster, Kinal toy cluster, and there are a lot of crafts persons, including women self-help groups, who are working in these sectors, and they are going to stand to benefit by engaging with spaces like this, because their products will get visibility in such spaces, especially through the souvenir shops and other workshops also that we provide. Recently, as part of Vishwakarma Jayanti, we held a crafts workshop in which different crafts from Karnataka, they came and they demonstrated, and from there they got links with different agencies for their businesses. So that is how we link to the local economy and the tourism.
And the tourism part of it. Great. Which are very important questions. I mean, most of the cities are often characterized by the iconic public spaces. Like, for example, Sydney is known for the Opera House. So how do you approach designing a space that reflects both the cultural identity of the community and the contemporary architectural trends? I mean, how do you kind of approach that?
Well, in some sense, that question that you pose is at the heart of all creative pursuit. This bridge that you want to make between history, the canon, if you will, everything that you've learned, everything that you've seen, and this idea of being in the world, that you are now, you've got climate crisis, you've got all of these sort of issues that you're confronted with. How do you bring to bear the ideas and the knowledge of the past and all of the canon that, in architecture, for instance? And how do you bring that to express something from the zeitgeist? There's a wonderful essay by T.S. Eliot, this is 1900 or something, tradition and the individual talent, where he talks about that, this idea that the traditional writer is drawing from Homer, from Shakespeare, of course it's a very Western, Eurocentric sort of view, but also then talking in his bones, in her bones, of this time, expressing something. And sometimes you see that in great architecture. So if you go, for instance, my favorite building, the IIM Bangalore campus, there are moments in that building where it seems awfully familiar. It's got this incredible power, and yet it's absolutely contemporary. It reminds you of Madurai, but it's also of the now. And it's very, very rare to have that experience in modern buildings. We try, but yeah, that is the central pursuit of the architect, of the creative person. A few of the things that you had asked me, since you've mentioned Sydney Opera House, I've got some slides of it. But as an architect, there are some strategies one uses to express the idea of publicness. So in the BIC, for instance, that's a wonderful drawing made by Divyang Sharma. So much of this building is just unlabeled space that, you meet your friends, you have, a coffee with somebody, or you have a chance encounter with a writer who's just finished his lecture and you spend some time talking about it again, similar to what is in the Rangashankara. That's the heart of the BIC. That happens not only in plan, but also in section, where across that section you have this cascading terrace section. So from the ground floor, you can look right up and see your friend up there, or, you suddenly feel part of that large community of people who are in that building, which is at the heart of this public institution. And so that really is, the big move of the BIC. And with regards to and we are drawing from history, from, the people who we look at. This is the Sydney Harbour, where the Opera House is. And the harbour is made out of these fingers, they're these sort of headlands that come into the harbour. And the Sydney Opera House sits right there at the top there, next to the harbour bridge. And it's one of those fingers of the Sydney, harbour, which then, so Utzon, the great Danish architect, very young when he won this competition, was drawing upon these two references for his building. He said that when you go to South America and you climb up onto these plateaus, he calls them, you're coming out of the Amazonian jungle, up onto this platform, and for a minute, you have now conquered nature. You're in a position of incredible power where you couldn't see the horizon in the thicket of the jungle. From that platform, now you can survey everything, and you're in charge, in power, in complete control of your destiny, so to speak. And that's public. That's the idea of being in public space, this notion of vantage, of being in some sort of position from where to survey the horizon. And so when you look at the Opera House, which all of us have seen, these are Utzon's competition sketches. But really, for me, the Opera House is that platform which echoes, or which retraces the notion of the headland on which it sits. And as you come into that building and walk up that passage up to the top, you're reaching what Utzon saw in South America, this place of incredible power from where you enter the auditorium and you can now survey the horizon. A place of great public feeling. And that's, one of the headlands. And another building, again, to talk about the BIC, this is Moneo in Spain. Moneo did a small civic building in Spain, but what's really interesting about this building is that it's surrounded by these medieval buildings with all of these retables where the patron saints and the kings and queens stand and benevolently give you access to public space. The king comes out on the balcony on the left, and he's sort of allowing you access. And Moneo makes this building which has its own retables, where now anybody coming to City Hall can stand in one of those retables and reclaim public space for himself or herself. taking hegemony, taking control of one's own destiny from that place of vantage. So for me, these notions of public space, of being in public space, having vantage and autonomy and agency is what is at the heart of these architectural buildings. And that's what we've tried to do here at the BIC.
Well,
Fantastic, fantastic. And I must thank the panelists here for taking our time, and the audiences that have come in on a Sunday, and that really matters a lot. I mean, coming on a Sunday and participating means a lot for the cultural sector, and I think with that, thank you so much for all of you for being here.